Senator Gillibrand, thanks for coming here today.
I'm delighted.
Okay, so I want to talk about how some of the military sexual assault legislation is going to play out in the next month. But before we do that, you know, you get elected and you can choose any issue. And you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but like, why this one? What, you have been so committed on this. You've really sort of taken it up as a cause. Why?
Well, I kind of feel like it chose me, and this was an issue that a couple friends had brought to my attention. You know, please look at sexual assault in the military. It's a real issue. And I said, of course, of course. But it wasn't until I saw the film The Invisible War and really heard those stories of survivors. And I was so enraged when I listened to these stories of young men and women getting brutally raped and saying, I could survive the rape, but what I couldn't survive is my family, my military, the military I serve, turning their back on me. And I couldn't imagine as a mother having a daughter or a son call me and say, Mom, this is what happened. I couldn't believe that these men and women who will literally die for our country were being treated so poorly by the chain of command that was supposed to be there to protect them and to make sure they were trained and well looked after. The stories were so heartbreaking to me and so infuriating, I felt I had to do something.
The way this issue is playing out is not like, I think, any other issue in domestic policy right now, because there's no, if you pick a senator or a member of Congress at random, you can't predict where they'll be based on partisan affiliation, geographic. Congressman Michael Turner of Ohio, he's the co-chair of the Sexual Assault Prevention Caucus. He had this to say about you and the legislation you're pushing. She seriously misrepresents the circumstances of the Defense Department because she ignores the legislation that was passed. I think at this point, it's certainly not an issue of sexual assault. It's just an issue of the senator wanting to promote her solution that has already lost. I think she's getting a whole lot of attention for a debate that's over. What do you say to that?
Well, he's wrong. I think the reforms in the underlying bill are good. They're all good, well-meaning reforms that will help. But all of them accrue to a victim who has come forward and reported. None of them do anything for the 9 out of 10 cases that aren't being reported, because the victims have told us over and over and over again on the DOD survey that they aren't reporting because they don't believe the chain of command will do anything. They don't report because they fear retaliation. They feel that they will be blamed for reporting a crime. And so if you listen to the victims, if you listen to those survivors, the one thing they've asked for is they don't want this decision being made within the chain of command. They believe the chain of command is too biased. They're untrained, they're not lawyers, and in too many cases, they're the ones who are making sure the cases never get reported. And so if you listen to the victims, all these other changes are good. They will help victims who have reported take their case forward, better standards of evidence, all good things, but not one create a system where these victims feel they can come forward and hope to receive justice.
So there was a battle that happened over the defense authorization bill, and there were amendments offered. The ones that passed reform the system in the way you said. The thing you are pushing for is to take allegations of sexual assault and the prosecution thereof out of the chain of command. Right. That is the crystallized fight here.
Exactly. Because look at the issue, Chris. Last year alone, there were 26,000 cases of sexual assault and rape and unwanted sexual contact in the military, and only about 3,000 were reported. So that means 9 out of 10 cases aren't even being reported because of this fear that the command won't do anything or they will be retaliated against for reporting. Of the brave ones who did report those 3,000 cases, 62% were retaliated against. So in that number of command climates, the commanders did not protect those victims from coming forward and saying, I've been raped.
So then then why is the resistance? I mean, if the case you're laying out seems very persuasive to me. You have members of Congress on both sides. You have Claire McCaskill, a colleague of yours, who says this has unfortunately been characterized as victim versus the Pentagon. That does the victims a real disservice. You've got the Pentagon fighting you. What is the opposition grounded in?
Well, you'll hear the Department of Defense say you can't possibly do this because it will undermine good order and discipline. I have at least 3 responses to that. First, 26,000 cases of rape and sexual assault is not good order and discipline. Second, you're not taking commanders off the hook. You're not making them less responsible. In fact, so few commanders have this role today, less than 20%. So most commanders have to train their troops, take them to war, and never have this ability to make a decision. And third, Our allies have already done this. Our allies, the UK, Israel, Australia, Canada, Germany, Netherlands, all of them have taken this decision out of the chain of command for civil liberties reasons. They agreed that you cannot have a system of justice that allows someone who's biased and untrained to make the only decision about whether it goes to trial. And so to protect both victims' rights and defendants' rights, they made this change.
Have we seen empirical evidence in those regimes of improved levels of reporting, of lower levels of retaliation?
Well, they all did it in different circumstances. Israel, for example, did it in 1955, so this wasn't the issue for them. The UK did it 5 years ago in the instance of a murder trial because the murder accused said, my commander's already decided I'm guilty, I can't get a fair trial. And they said, yeah, to protect civil liberties, you should have a decision maker who's not biased.
It was the protection on the other side of the accuser accused.
They did it all for different reasons, but what we do know, and they testified in front of us to say, none of them suffered good order and discipline when they changed their system. The only reason the military have given not to do this is it will undermine good order and discipline. And for all of our allies to have done it and say, it hasn't changed our ability to command our troops, that's meaningful.
You're going to take another run at this in March, is my understanding, right?
Yeah, we should get a vote soon, hopefully in March. And we have a majority of the Senate. We have 54 senators who are already with us. It's bipartisan. This is a piece of legislation
54 is 6 votes short.
Of a filibuster.
I cover the Senate every day.
Yeah, but it's already a majority of the Senate. And if our opponents want to filibuster a bill, if they want to filibuster justice for these men and women who will give their lives for our country, that is their right to do, and we will meet that 60-vote threshold.
You think there is going to be a filibuster?
They are filibustering. They've already said they're going to require 60 votes. A typical bill requires a majority of the Senate. It doesn't require a filibuster-proof majority. If they choose to use procedural blocks like a filibuster to make it more difficult to do this reform, that's their choice.
Okay.
And we will meet their filibuster.
Final question on this topic. I covered when I was writing my book, I spent a lot of time covering the Catholic Church and sex abuse inside the Catholic Church and brutally upsetting material. And I ended up wrestling with this question of, is there something wrong with this institution? Like there's some pathology in this institution? Or is it just that I had higher expectations and these people are fallen in the way normal people are fallen? Or is it that this institution is being exposed to a level of light that others aren't? When you think about the military and sexual assault in the military, how do you get your head around, is there some specific pathology to the military? Is it that we have higher expectations and they're failing to meet them? Or are they under more scrutiny and so we're seeing the dark side of sort of human behavior in a way we aren't in other venues?
I don't think it's any of those reasons. I think we have the greatest and strongest military in the world, but we have a closed system where your boss, the commander, holds all the cards. They are the only decision maker on whether or not you go to trial. And so that boss, if they're not a lawyer, if they don't know what sexual assault and rape is, if they think it's a crime of dating or a hookup culture, they're not going to get it right. And to expect them to get it right is the mistake. It's the expectation that a commander who is not trained can make these decisions well. And so the problem in the military, they have double the incidence rate than in the civilian sector and half the reporting rate. So there's a problem with delivering justice under this current system.
You're saying it's a structural policy problem.
It is a structural problem asking
not
the wrong...
cultural, not a cultural problem.
I think there's a cultural problem everywhere in society when it comes to this issue, but I think the problem in the military is they have the wrong people making the decision. They're not trained lawyers. They're not prosecutors. They don't know much about this particular crime. And so if you're going to guarantee civil liberties for every man and woman who serves in our military, you should have a bright line. All serious crimes should be decided by trained military prosecutors. Only then will you have a level of transparency and accountability that our brave men and women deserve. We have to have a military justice system deserving of their sacrifice. And today we don't have it. One last thing. This military has said, our commanders have said, we've got this. Zero tolerance for sexual assault for 25 years. Last year, 26,000 cases.
That's not zero tolerance.
And only 1 in 100 going to trial and ending in prosecution, in conviction. 1 out of 100. 1 out of 10 even being reported.